Rudy Eck was in a German panzer at Omaha Beach on the coast of France on D-Day in 1944. Formerly of Pforzheim in southern Germany, today he is a tool and die maker, living in Glendale, California.
Seiner Heimatstadt zurückkehrt.
When you go back to your hometown, you must have a battle story to tell about. I wasn't afraid of nothing. Don't think I talk big. Sometimes I was shaking, but in a fight you forget. I wanted a medal, so I was brave.
William Joseph was in the first wave at Omaha Beach on D-Day 1944. Today he lives in San Jose, California. He's a painting contractor and his hobby is building racing cars.
I was at the front of the landing craft and I crawled up on the ramp and looked at the beach. We were still far enough out I couldn't make out too much. Looked kind of smoky and hazy. We wondered how we were going to make out.
At bloody Omaha Beach, the lives of William Joseph and Rudy Eck came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one American, one German, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. With the exception of total victory, nothing in World War II was so eagerly awaited by the peoples of the Allied countries as the invasion of Fortress Europa. Hitler builds the defenses for 4 years, an impregnable Atlantic wall of concrete, steel, and men. And to crush it, and what lies beyond, the Allies mount an army of nearly 3 million men, the greatest sea and air armada the world has ever known. September 1943, the American 1st Division, the Big Red One, lands at Liverpool. Veterans of the landings in Africa and Sicily, they join the 1.5 million Americans gathering in England for the invasion of Europe. One of these veterans, attached to the 16th Infantry, is Lieutenant William Joseph.
Our division is scattered all over England. My regiment winds up in a little village on the east coast. We're told we're here for the invasion of France. After Sicily, we figured we've had enough and that we're going back to the States as a training division. Well, then we get this order. Everyone is pretty well upset about it. It's an order, though, and we're stuck with it. The majority of the boys are draftees, along with a lot of 90-day wonders. But we're a pretty cocky bunch because we've seen so much action.
To prepare Operation Overlord, as Churchill names the invasion, southern England is turned into an armed camp. Awesome stockpiles of guns, ammunition, and equipment grow in the hay meadows and ferny dells of the English countryside. 16 million tons will pour into the tight little island by invasion time. The toughest training Allied troops have faced is thrown at every man. It is grinding, back-breaking, relentless, endless.
We go into high gear for this invasion, and the boys get pretty proficient. We go into assaultry, the highest level. Assaultry of this sort is a pretty special kind of thing. One of the things about this training is that we have so much stuff to carry. Every bit of gear is doubled because they expect us to lose most of it. They tell us it'll be tough. We work it all out and we carry about 150 pounds of gear. Try to run with this, but we have to. Once in a while, we get up to London on a 2-day pass. It's good to have a breather.
There are no breathers across the English Channel. For 4 years, Hitler's Atlantic Wall has been his obsession. For 4 years, thousands of laborers have worked to forge its guns, pillboxes, and concrete obstacles into an impregnable barricade. The wall would be even stronger if Germany's commander-in-chief in the West, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt believed in it as much as Hitler. With 2,000 miles of coastline to defend, von Rundstedt believes with Frederick the Great that he who defends all defends nothing. Assuming the initial landing will be successful, von Rundstedt plans to move his powerful reserve force up instantly and drive the invasion army back into the sea. When Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is ordered to France in late 1943, it is to conduct an inspection tour of the Atlantic defenses. Concluding that the success of Rundstedt's defense depends on air cover that the dwindling Luftwaffe can no longer provide, he urges drastic revisions. In January 1944, Rommel is given principal responsibility for the coast defense. Convinced that the invasion team must be destroyed before it ever gets across the beaches, the energetic Desert Fox orders every gap in the wall closed. The high water line, he says, must be the main fighting line. Rommel sets about turning the approaches into a nightmare of submerged obstacles, concrete dragon's teeth, hedgehogs, mines, and spikes. On the beaches themselves, the artillery is roofed and walled with concrete, laced together with miles of barbed wire. Thousands of new tank traps, obstacles, and pillboxes are added to the wall. By the end of May, 4 million mines, each one capable of blowing a man's legs off, are buried in the Normandy sand. For 7 miles back, every open area is flooded or planted with obstacles to frustrate any airborne landing. Every available soldier, from baker to clerk, is ordered to man the coastal defenses. The first 24 hours will be decisive. Even with troop strength depleted by the demands of the Russian front and the Allied landings at Anzio, 14 German divisions are lined up and waiting by the middle of May. One division, ordered back from Hungary, is the crack Panzer Lehr, now the strongest panzer division in the German army. One of its tank gunners is Private Rudi Eck.
We arrive on May 20th. I have fought in Russia and France already. I'm sure our officers know exactly when the enemy is to make an invasion. Something is definitely coming up. We have to hide our tanks. There's always danger from the American side, always the airplanes. They have fighter planes with bombs. They come often, and for the first week we just try to stay out of the way. We move our things into position, but not too close together. Because if an airplane hits you, you all go. On the 27th of May, 12 of our tanks are ordered to come out of our hiding places and move up closer to the beach. The infantry is already there. They tell us to find a place where we can see everything, but where we can't be seen. We have a saying in the German army that it is better to have a good shooting range than a place to hide. I think the shooting is to be for my life.
One day, Eisenhower comes to see us. He walks up and down the ranks, and a lot of us get to talk to him. He asks us if we got any special problems or anything on our minds. When he asks me, I tell him I'd like to go home. He just smiles at me and says, you know, I'd like to go home too.
To keep the Germans confused about the invasion point, the Allies staged numerous probing maneuvers up and down the French coast.
We go and probe off the shore of Calais, then we keep working south. We go in within 5 or 6 miles to shore and draw their artillery fire. Then we go into the channel again and circle around another 10 miles, then come in again. We move around to keep them guessing. One night, we have a bit of trouble from an E-boat that sneaked into our convoy. It sunk one of our ships. Later, I find there are 1,000 casualties. It might as well have been the real thing.
June 1st dawns gray and dull and marks the beginning of the worst weather in 30 years. Now all the invasion timing, dependent on the tide for the landing of troops, moonlight for the airborne, calm seas, and the simultaneous beginning of the new Russian offensive, all the careful planning hangs on a weather report. And the odds on good weather? 13-1 against. The British are assigned 2 beaches, codenamed Gold and Sword. The Canadians are assigned 1, codenamed Juno. The Americans get 2, Utah and Omaha. 5 in all, the beaches of Normandy, an 80-mile patch in the Atlantic Wall, the target for Overlord. Finally, on the morning of June 5th, after already calling the ships back once because of the weather, Eisenhower makes the agonizing decision. He says simply, "We'll go." And the greatest invasion in the history of man is underway.
I have a strange feeling. I tell my friends, I think something is going to happen tomorrow. And they just tell me I'm a dreamer. And I say, no, I have a feeling like I will die tomorrow. And they say, I hope nothing happens to you. I hope not too.
The weather odds are also known to Field Marshal Rommel. So on June 5th, he leaves his headquarters to go home for his wife's birthday. The weather is bad, and he knows that the Allies never land in bad weather. June 6th, 1944. Across the same storm-tossed English Channel, which 356 years earlier had defeated the proud Spanish Armada, now steams another, 5,300 ships, moving toward the liberation of Europe. Overhead, thousands of fighter planes, hundreds of troop transports and gliders carrying the paratroop vanguard of the invasion.
It's real rough. It stays rough. It just goes round and round like that. And thinking about it, and being in such close quarters, a lot of the boys are just deathly sick, seasick, from the tension of it all. We can't do anything about it. And then the rendezvousing stops. We all straighten out in a line. We can barely see the shore of France, the beaches of Normandy. But now, nobody is sick.
The waves are high. The clouds are low and threatening. But by dawn, all the convoys are unloading their human and mechanical cargo into landing craft.
We wonder how we're going to make this invasion. I think an LST will never make it in this water. The waves are around 20 feet high. A lot of the boys break their legs when they try to change ships. I think half the battle is to get on the damn landing craft.
somebody wakes me up, and he's very excited, and he says, something is going on. Maybe you must be right what you said last night, that something is coming up.
Loaded with 32 men each, the landing craft start the run for the beach.
I'm up at the front of the landing craft, and I crawl up on the ramp and look at the beach. It looks kind of hazy and smoky. The closer we get in, we can hear these bullets hitting. All sorts of shells start hitting around the water. Goes down, and we are about 100 yards out. We are supposed to come in a bit closer. There's a strong tide, but we all come charging out and jumping over the sides. When we first come out, it's about 2 feet deep. After we go another 10 or 20 yards, it's over our heads. The storm has washed out the sand. It takes about 15 minutes to get in.
For the 8 companies of men coming into Omaha Beach, the Rommel nightmare begins to come true. It is here that the struggle is fiercest. Omaha Beach. 6 miles of hell with 100-foot cliffs at either end.
They're firing tank and machine guns at us. When our first tank's off the landing craft, we see them sink to the bottom, just yards from the beaches.
Amid sinking tanks and exploding landing craft, raked by machine gun fire, many of the men sink and drown as they step off the landing craft.
I look for my firing and I see there are many soldiers on the beach. They are coming and coming. We have good defenses. I see down on the beach the mines blowing up. I see the Americans hiding behind the iron obstacles. I see soldiers falling in the water and on the beach.
Nobody's moving on the beach. Just all of us laying in the sand, shoulder to shoulder. Nobody cares whether he gets killed or whether anybody gets killed. It's a feeling like you're dead, or you're gonna be dead.
While everything goes wrong on Omaha Beach, nearly everything is right on Utah Beach. The U.S. 4th Division lands there with little resistance and moves rapidly inland. At Juneau Beach, the high seas and German defenses are frustrating. The sandy strip is marked with the dead and the dying of both sides. Sword Beach is a small beach, but a naval port and guarded by heavy gun emplacements. Weather and terrain take heavy casualties from the British first wave. At Gold Beach, amphibious tanks are vital in wiping out enemy gun emplacements. the men on the beaches are not fighting alone. In this one day, 10,000 flights of aircraft batter German defenses with more than 11,000 tons of bombs. But of all the beaches, it is on Omaha Beach that the struggle is fiercest. Of all the beaches, this is the most disastrous. As the hours go by, it gets tighter and tighter. It is on the beaches that, face to face, man to man, the victory must be won.
Keep coming in. I could see fellas getting hit, drowning, but they keep coming. I climb up this cliff and finally 20 men or so join me. They say they can't see anything to shoot at. I say just keep shooting.
I see our soldiers wounded. I see our soldiers dying. I think of my friends at home dead from the bombing. I try to be a good soldier.
With the troops moving inland everywhere, it is apparent that the gamble has paid off. Although nobody knows the exact figures, approximately 160,000 men are ashore by the end of D-Day. The beachhead is secure. Lieutenant William Joseph fights his way through France, helps liberate Paris, then is wounded and blown out of his bed by a bomb. Private Rudy Eck and his tank are forced to pull back. Later he fights in the Battle of the Bulge and through the Rhineland, is awarded the Iron Cross before being taken prisoner by the Americans near the River Elbe. It took months of planning and the sacrifice of 10,000 young men to break Hitler's wall on D-Day.